When Rome abolished the monarchy, it did not truly destroy a system. It merely reshaped it and made it more complex. It did not tear something down, on the contrary, it transformed it into something more dangerous and more controllable. It released power, but did not fully set it free. It spread it within itself and integrated it into its system. Because Rome never moved toward the naive goal of eliminating power, Rome always managed to control it, direct it, and reshape it when necessary. The monarchy fell, but power itself never fell and never disappeared. It simply changed form, becoming more fragmented, more complex, yet also more subtle. Power was no longer in the hands of a single individual, but that did not mean it had weakened. On the contrary, power had spread throughout every corner of the system, making it more resilient. The Republic was born, but this birth was not a memory of freedom. It was a reorganization of control. 2 consuls emerged, but even this number was a reflection of Rome's distrust of power. The Senate continued to exist, but now it assumed a deeper, more permanent, and more decisive role. Popular assemblies were established, but these structures did not offer unlimited power, only a limited sphere of influence. From the outside, this system created the impression that power was shared and distributed. But in Rome, power is never truly shared. It is only made to appear shared and is kept in balance. Because Rome understands this very well, power is either under your control or it falls under someone else's control and becomes a threat to you. That is why Rome creates what appears to be a middle ground, but is actually a delicate balance. The consuls are powerful because they command the army, initiate wars, and make decisions on behalf of the state. But they are never alone, because power that stands alone becomes uncontrollable. There are always 2 individuals, because Rome does not trust a single person, and never will. This is not merely a system of governance, it is a strategic precaution against human nature. Because Rome knows that when a person gains power, they change, and that change is often dangerous. That is why terms are short, often limited to 1 year, and this is a deliberate choice. Because as time extends, power takes root, and rooted power is the hardest to control. Rome cuts this process early, attempting to limit power before it grows, keeping it constantly active. But this control is never complete because power grows not only with time, but also with opportunity. And in Rome, opportunities exist, especially during wars and expansion where they multiply. At this point, the Senate steps in as a silent yet highly effective center of power. The Senate is invisible, yet its decisions and guidance determine everything. It is not elected, but it is permanent. And that permanence makes it dangerous. It is not temporary, because Rome values what is lasting, not what is fleeting. Consuls come and go, but the Senate always remains and carries the system. This is Rome's true center, the unseen core that governs everything. It is also the memory of Rome, because the knowledge of the past is preserved here and shapes the decisions of the future. Rome does not trust individuals because people are weak, changeable, and fragile. Rome trusts the system because the system is permanent, flexible, and adaptable. But this system is not flawless because it contains an uncontrollable truth within it, the desire for power. This desire grows, becomes more visible over time, and harder to control. Roman society is divided. There is a sharp distinction between patricians and plebeians. This is not merely a social divide, it is a conflict between 2 different worldviews. One seeks to rule, the other seeks a share in that rule. This conflict is inevitable, because interests never fully align. The plebeians begin to speak, and over time that speech turns into demands. They want more rights, more representation, and a stronger presence within the system. At this point, Rome makes a critical choice. It would either suppress these demands or integrate them into the system. Rome does not suppress, because suppressed power returns one day as a greater threat. Rome transforms because transformed power becomes controllable. New institutions are established, new balances are created, and the system expands. The tribunes emerge. The voice of the people now exists within the system. But this voice is not unlimited. It is controlled and carefully bounded. This is not surrender. It is a deliberate design. Rome does not give power, but it directs it and keeps it within itself. Rome does not eliminate conflict. It turns it into controlled energy and uses it. Because Rome knows that controlled conflict is not a threat to the system. It is a resource. And this resource drives Rome's outward expansion. Wars increase, Rome expands rapidly across Italy and defeats its rivals. But Rome's difference is this: it does not destroy. It transforms and binds others to itself. Instead of killing its enemies, it integrates them as part of the system. That is why Rome grows, yet does not fragment or lose control. Because Rome is not just power, Rome is an organized system. But as the system grows, control becomes more difficult and governance more complex. More power is required. Faster decisions are needed. And this is where danger begins, because as speed increases, balance deteriorates. The Republic requires balance, but a growing power demands speed and centralized control. These two needs cannot coexist indefinitely, and Rome has begun to feel this contradiction. Commanders grow stronger, armies begin to obey leaders directly, and personal loyalty forms. Loyalty shifts away from the state, toward individuals, and this is the greatest threat to the system. Because Rome operates on rules, but powerful individuals can override those rules and disrupt the system. Rome is still strong, but it has now become more fragile. Because greatness is not always strength, sometimes it becomes a burden that is difficult to manage. Rome is carrying this burden, but it is not yet fully aware of it. The system still stands, the balance still functions, and control is still maintained. But this will not last forever, because power, by its nature, seeks to grow and does not wish to remain in balance. Power seeks to unify, to gather in a single center, and this is inevitable. Rome has not yet experienced this, but it will, because Rome's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. Because within Rome now exist two forces, the system and the force that strains against the system, and these two elements cannot coexist indefinitely. At some point, one will destroy the other, and this is inevitable. Rome continues to expand, but at the same time, it begins to define its own limits. Because Rome's power is the greatest factor that determines its fate. And that fate is not yet complete, but it is approaching. And when it arrives, Rome will never be the same again. But that is the story of the next chapter.